Welcome to today's webinar. This is another installment of a series of programs that are held and offered by Cofyouth Incorporated, aimed to educate and inspire the educators, parents, and all those with interest in the missions of this organization. For anyone joining us for the first time, Creating Opportunities for Youth Incorporated is an organization founded by a group of educators that seek to advocate for children with special needs and their families with the help of other educators and service providers.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ngozi Martin-Oguike of the Cofyouth Incorporated. We are here again with our discussion sessions. This is Autism Awareness Month, the month of April. And I have with me other discussants on this panel. Autism is a spectrum disorder that affects a lot of our young people, and it's been rampant in the last 15 years or more. And this is a time to discuss it, to create awareness and bring children with autism into the limelight. So this afternoon, I have on the panel Mrs. Sandra Uchebulem. She's a teacher, a pastor, a youth minister, and she works with a lot of Christian couples and other couples. And she's calling in all the way from California, and she's going to be discussing this very passionate topic with us. I also have on the line a mother and an attorney, our sister Rosamond. She's going to join us and have some questions from areas that she's passionate about. So you are all welcome to this discussion panel. Join us, and please feel free to give us feedback as you listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Ngo. It's nice to be here in the beautiful spring. So
Right.
Thank you for having us. And, autism disorder is something we cannot even sweep under the rug. It's something that affects everybody on this planet, every culture, every color, every creed. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter one's socioeconomic status. It's something that is prevalent. And, the worst we can do to ourselves is not to bring the necessary awareness to those that may not understand all that it is. I mean, like you said, it's a spectrum. That means it's a wide range of things that could happen. For some, it's severe, some is mild. It can go from here to there and all that. So it's an issue that we cannot overlook. So thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Thank you so much, Sandra, that you made time to be with us on this. Autism is a disorder, and it's not just one form of disorder. It is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, how they communicate, how they learn, how they behave. And it can be diagnosed at any age, but mostly at a very early age of between 2 and 3. So I just want you to give us a little more light, about autism in the US, especially since we are all calling from the US. What do you see about the rate of autism? What is autism actually, and then what is the rate that autism is affecting people in this country?
Oh, thank you so much. Actually, I mean, we'll go straight to the point. As the name is, ASD is autism spectrum disorder. Is a disorder, meaning that things are not the way it should be. It's disorder. And then spectrum in the sense that, it can go from mild effect to, moderate to severe effect. There are some people that, of course, we know that there are key areas where autism affects people is in their social interactions and communication. And sometimes they have repetitive, or almost most of the time, they have repetitive behavior. So they are just, it's glaring. Some, it can make them to be completely nonverbal. Some they can speak, some can have additional forms of disability, like, learning disability, ADHD, attention deficit disorder. Some is a range of things. Some can even have intellectual disability where, their cognitive level can go from the lowest to the highest. We are aware of a certain people within the spectrum that are called Asperger's. They are very smart, they can, and I'll paint a picture for you. I've had students that, because I teach mild to moderate, I don't teach the severe, but I'm also aware, and I have had training in those, people that are completely nonverbal. I've had a student in my algebra class that finished a whole year of algebra curriculum in 1 week. But he cannot read. He cannot, he doesn't socialize well. All he needs is to look at somebody, type in your password, and he memorizes it. He has everybody's student ID in his brain. That's just the way his brain works. And some of us they may not be able to do certain things or even be able to take care of their daily needs. So it's a spectrum. It can go within any range. And the best way to diagnose it is for the professional, the medical professionals. Nobody should, self-diagnose their child of autism. If you see signs of maybe delay in communication, or your child not looking you face to face, looking away, or affected by sound or things like that, or not doing things that you expect that child to do maybe at age 1, age 2, it's time to seek advice. Now, just to paint a good picture to us, since we're in the US, the CDC in 2001, which was just last year, did, put out some statistics that, 1 in 44 children are diagnosed with autism. That's alarming. That's alarming. That means that we cannot be ignorant of things to look for and what to do about what we are seeing. It also shows that 1 out of 27 boys are diagnosed, and 1 out of about 112 girls have autism. So it calls for concern, and it calls for, everybody being aware. Of course, it shouldn't make us paranoid. It shouldn't make people panic, because the beautiful thing about autism, I'm sure back in the day, like in the country where I am from, it was almost like, oh, some spiritual thing is happening to a child, or is something that makes people want to withdraw or not even open to seek help or to call it what it is. They call it everything but what it is. So this awareness, should every young mom, every parent, anyone that have a child, grandparents, to pay attention to their child. As soon as they come out of the womb, start looking at them, pay very close attention. If you don't pay attention, you may not see some signs, things that aren't right, like your child not crying, your child not being able to look at your face or not smile, not react to stimulus. So those things just, it's imperative that everyone should be aware, because once you're aware, there are always solutions. There are things, interventions that are done, and when it's done early, it makes life much easier for those that have that. So just for the time being, I think that's our stuff here.
Thank you so very much, Sandra. This is actually what we are looking at. You mentioned the fact that we need to be aware and be able to identify the children as early as possible. And so that brings us to early intervention. I just know that the sooner we are able to identify a problem, then the easier it is to deal with that problem. So, what would you say, in our society, especially in a society where some parents are not really happy, or nobody is happy to have their child diagnosed with anything, but people are kind of skeptical about this diagnosis. What would you advise a parent, about early intervention for these children? How would that work for, especially for those of us in schools?
All right. I would say that early intervention is key to having your child, any child that is living with autism, to live independently as much as possible. No, like we stated earlier, this diagnosis can happen between age 1 and 3. That's the best time to start something. At that point, they could receive, communication or speech and language kind of services. They are also structured in a manner that they can begin to live their life of routine. Because one thing we know about autistic or children living with autism, they work well under structure, they work well, when you understand their triggers, when you understand the best way to program for them. So when they are diagnosed early, things can be programmed for them. Your home can be set up in a manner that, you're only empowering them. You're, seeing things that work well for them and reinforcing those things, and also removing things that actually doesn't help them. So early intervention cannot be overemphasized. So take that child into the doctor, let them look at it. There's always a team of people, that look at several things. There's speech pathologists, all kinds of people. Sometimes it affects their mobility. Like I said, it's a spectrum and it could impact several things. It's a neurological issue. And I also want to chip in because sometimes people are wondering, okay, what causes this? And people say things like, oh, it was a child's immunization. Not necessarily. So I don't believe it's that. It's just that sometimes because we can dictate it from year one, and so many immunizations happen around that period, and you just think, oh, this child changed. But just paying close attention to a child, understanding what developmental milestones each child should hit at a certain, stage in their life, being aware of that, not being consumed by activities or your work, would help you dictate those. And once you do, the pediatricians, take them to them, narrate what you're seeing. They will also watch it. They will gather, a good team of people that will evaluate that child. They will evaluate their hearing. They will evaluate their communication skill. They will evaluate so many things, so many neurological things that they can do in order to find that out. Once that is done, the school system is also involved. Trigger that very quickly. And we have tons of resources, how these children are programmed for, the way that things are structured for them in order to maximize. And sometimes you will see a child that could have gone maybe up to 5 years and they are not speaking. They are beginning to speak because somebody is explicitly teaching them, arming them with those skills, how to play with others, how to, socialize. Things that maybe every other child can naturally learn, they need to be taught, they need to be coached, they need to be, they need to have a structure, a pattern where they can follow, and these things become second nature to them as they grow up.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we are hitting it right there where it should be. You talked about consistency, being able to give them an environment that is consistent. I will add to it structure, the structure that they need. And I would also like to emphasize the fact that a lot of children with autism want to do things in a very stereotypical way, and that means that they need structure. They don't need to be moved around here and there. They start a program, they don't complete it, they start a different one. They need to actualize themselves in whatever program that they are doing. And I think that's very important. You mentioned the social skills, which is very important when they learn to play with other students. And that's where I am coming, that's what I'm trying to ask, a question I'm trying to ask you, being that you work in churches, you work with parents. These youth and children, with autism in our churches, do you see them in churches? And what's your impression?
Well, that is a very good question. I've gone to, at least since being in this country, I've gone to about 2 churches predominantly, and I can see that oftentimes those children are not programmed for, unfortunately. No, I do know that there are certain churches too that have done better than others to recognize that these children learn differently. Oftentimes you see them in the sanctuary, in the main church where, they are sitting by their parents because others are not, you know, they don't have the training to work with them. And instead of putting them in children's church or in youth church, they're hanging around their moms or dads, which is not okay. I think we have come to that point as a church that we should do better. We should train the teachers, because oftentimes those that teach in children's church or youth church are not necessarily, educationists or people that have gone through formal education to be a teacher or so. But then there are things that could be done to help. I'll paint this picture to you. We once had in my current church, we had a training for children's church teachers, and we were asking different things. So what do you do? How do you manage your classroom? And somebody said, I just buy them candy and I just give them candy and all that. And man, I was like, whoa. So for her, bribing them with the candy, what if that child, part of the things that are triggers are inside the candy?
Exactly.
That could cause a problem, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I think our churches or church leaders being able to, and I think part of what we're doing now is that same awareness to get our people to know that there are simple things that could be done or trainings that can be done just to help teachers accommodate these children living with autism. Now, and I wouldn't want them to have another class of their own. Now, the truth is that children inside our churches or in the classroom, in the Sunday school churches, they know these kids. They have seen them in their classrooms, in their private schools or public school. They stay in the same classroom with them, some of them, depending on, where they are in the spectrum. If they are not verbal, okay, those ones will be such that if there are more than one or two, there should be a class for them because they learn differently. The way their things that they are used, their technologies that can help them, to communicate. So they should be in a separate classroom. But if they are able to communicate, like one of the interventions that are done is where behaviors are analyzed, ABA, which a teacher, you can actually ask the parent if they have a behavioral support plan that the teachers implement in school. And churches can take that from them and also see how they can adapt it to their, 45 minutes or 1 hour of class that these students attend. What a beautiful thing it will be for a parent to know that their child is supported even in the church. And I feel strongly that it's this movement, awareness in churches should be priority because they are often left behind in a day that matters for people of faith. It could be a Muslim, mosque or whatever place of worship, that a child is being able to program for those children is key so they can benefit. And also the parent can also relax and have the services that they attend, whether it's church or, mosque or, the synagogue, whatever place of worship that any person is.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the angle that we're going right now with this, because I was just thinking about it. Every other program that we recommend our students to, they always come back to the case manager and ask, what about his IEP? Even in the community, once you recommend a student with autism or Down syndrome or any other multiple disabilities, they will always come back to us and ask us for their IEPs. But the church never does that. They don't ask for IEPs. They don't, probably due to faith, we may not really believe that it's necessary. But then we continuously see these students being excluded from mainstream programs. You have students with all different disabilities in the school choir, but you may not have them in the church choir and things like that. And they might be very musical. They might play drums. They might play the saxophone. So as you are talking now, I'm just thinking about it. Supposing our Sunday school teachers receive the IEPs, understand the modifications that are being used in school, and use it at church, because we need consistency. Use it at church, use it at home, use it in school, and then it becomes a structure for that student. It takes, what does it take? Maybe a month or two of doing the same thing, and it becomes a habit. So that's really very, very interesting that you see the fact that we actually need those ABA structures. We actually need the behavioral therapy that is being done out there to be brought into the church, because they need to learn, and any way that works for them needs to be implemented for them all around, and they can develop their faith as much as any other person. So this is what this discussion is all about, is the cross of this discussion. And I'm just wondering if we have any questions. Do we have any question from Sister Rosamond coming in?
First of all, to the parents of children within the autism spectrum, or that have found themselves dealing with, this type of, let's use the word disorder. But we all know that every human being under the face of the earth has one disorder or the other, but this one is just a little more prevalent. Just to say that, first and foremost, it's not a death sentence of any form. It's akin to the different crosses that all human beings have to carry, different kinds of crosses. I am very much into what the sister has said. She said so many valuable things, including these children as much as possible. But my question is, and then we've gone as far as, indicating that if the IEPs can be incorporated in these churches, do we have the manpower? Do we have the staff, volunteers or trained teachers to be able to manage these children? If we're going to be implementing things that are in their IEP within the context of the church program, how is this going to be implemented to enable these children be included? My passion is inclusion for these children. Even the ones that are really, a little bit more difficult, there are ways that they can be managed and they're included as much as possible, because there's no separate world, there's no separate planet for these children to live in. They have to live and move like every other human being, which they are in this particular planet where we find ourselves. So how do we say a lot about inclusion? Now we're talking about the IEP. How is this going to be incorporated within the context of the church? How are we going to do this? What are the practicalities, of making sure that at the end of the day, these children are profitably from whatever it is that we want to do for them, and they are properly included? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. It's a crucial question. Like you pointed out, do we have the manpower in a church? But one thing I do believe is that where there is will, there is always a way. Now, until we begin to see that we cannot leave this set of children behind, we'll start adjusting things. Now, just to point out, maybe for those that listen to this and I wonder what is IEP? IEP is Individualized Education Plan.